Today, we're gonna hill bound like Kilian. Hill bounding, Kilian Jornet, the GOAT of trail and ultra running, talks about in his book, Training for the Uphill Athlete, hill sprints, or more specifically what we're gonna talk about today, hill bounding, more power-based than speed-based. It's kind of a technique to build mechanical power in your legs, whereas strides kind of does the same thing, building mechanical and neuromuscular pathways for speed. Hill bounding does the same thing. It's kind of more applicable for trail and ultra runners. Now, Kilian, the GOAT himself, in his book talks about finding an extremely steep grade to make this effective. He talks about looking for a grade at least 30% and up to 50%. And for these hill bounding repetitions, he's looking at a duration of 8 to 10 seconds. So these are really max power reps we're talking about here. So I've just been kind of throwing them in at the end of a run. I dropped my daughter off at guitar school the other day. I usually have a quick hour to do a run, so I'll do about 35-40 minutes on the road, and then at the end there's like a little bit of a hill ramp up right to where her class is at. I started off doing some kind of hill strides, but then I thought, well, maybe I'll try the bounding, because power is something that I really want to develop and focus on. I started incorporating the bounding up that hill as opposed to straight hill sprinting. So the difference between a straight hill sprint or a flat stride or an inclined stride and hill bounding is that in bounding you want to focus on explosive jumping power. You want to really jump from one leg to another, pretend like you're a spring, and focus on being in the air as long as possible. It's kind of like a Mario Brothers situation, if you could think of it that way. You're just bouncing, and then imagine yourself hanging in the air, and then just as that foot is about to hit the ground, you want to explode off that next foot. You're not trying to turn your legs over as quick as possible. You want to focus on getting that power into the ground and having that reactive bounce when your foot touches down as quick as possible. So I'm just doing a little bit of a warm-up here before I get going. Very important before you do any type of hill bounding. You really want to make sure you warm up. I'm talking 15-20 minutes, easy running, then definitely some skips to get into that kind of ballistic movement, and maybe even some light uphill skipping and maybe light bounds up the hill before you start going at full power. So I completed my warm-up jog. This is a bit of a lighter grade. On the other side of this little mound is where I'm going to do my actual bounding. Do some skips, do some light bounds, and maybe just some kind of warm-up hill stride type of motions. Just more to get the blood flowing, make sure my muscles are loose before I get into the true bounding that we're going to go through. Skipping and bounding. Skipping, as you can see when I was warming up, you have that explosive power element, but when you skip, you're catching and then you're pretty much launching yourself from a solid kind of step. When you see when I'm bounding, that foot is in the air and you're bouncing right off that set, similar to when you're running. One ground contact and then you're off to the next bound. So you're not kind of shuffling feet when you're skipping. Skipping is great for the warm-up there. Also, if the bounding feels like too much for you, maybe you can't quite get the rhythm of it, it seems maybe too explosive for you, uphill skipping is definitely a serious workout. I just did that warm-up. I went up and down. I did a couple of quick strides up the hill, very light, not too strenuous, and then I did 2 or 3 uphill skips in the grass, of course. Soft surface, that makes it more difficult even, and my heart rate was up in the 160s, and that was after 1 or 2 minutes. If you take a look at the bounding, maybe you try it out and it becomes a bit too much, you might want to start off with the uphill skipping, power skipping, really get your arms into it, and then move on to the bounding. The bounding is going to have more of a plyometric effect because you're landing and exploding right away. So it's more of a plyometric, ballistic type workout than skipping is where you're just pushing straight off. That's great, but it's a little bit different. The bounding is going to definitely build more power. I'm just going to jog down this little grass hill. I haven't checked the grade on this one yet, but it may not be as steep as kind of a hill that I've been doing the bounding on the road on, but the grass makes it more difficult. So here we go. I'm going to go for a few rounds of this, and then I'll talk through what I'm doing. So that's 1 rep. As you can see, I didn't make it that far, but doing it on the grass here, soft surface, definitely more difficult than doing it on the road. It's definitely more forgiving too. It's an easier way to control your speed because the urge is to run them similar to how you would run a stride or a sprint and kind of get up the hill as fast as possible. When you're bounding, you're not going for speed. You're going for that power, which is going to get you more vertical than you would typically want to be when you're practicing strides or any type of speed work for that matter. You really want to focus on the power aspect. Full recovery here. I'm just walking around until I feel ready to go at another one full power. You don't want to do this half power because then you won't have the same effect. So I think I'm about ready now for the next one. If you're doing this correctly, you should get about 10 steps in and feel like you could hardly pick up your legs anymore. It should become very difficult to explode off of the ground. I actually haven't done this on grass for quite a while. I've been doing it kind of on that road like I talked about earlier. So you may want to start out as a test session on the road first to get the feel for the kind of hang time that you want to have when you're doing this. Doing it on a harder surface will actually make it easier to get off the ground than this kind of soft, boggy grass. It may help to find the rhythm if you do it on a firmer surface or maybe just packed dirt. I chose Skyfire 2s for this. They're pretty minimal. Good traction too. You don't want to have a big cushy shoe because you don't want to lose a lot of that power to the squish of the shoe. These also have pretty good lugs. I knew I was going to be doing this on grass, so that's why I also chose these. So you want to have a shoe that feels solid and stable underfoot. You don't want to be doing these, especially if you're in grass or even if you're kind of on a dirt trail. You don't want to be doing this in a soft or a high stack shoe because you should be putting that direct power into the ground, very minimal ground contact. That could be an ankle risk too if your shoe is not stable. So this is definitely my best shoe for this type of exercise. Hill bounding. This is going to improve your power. For trail runners especially, running those hills, I found that it helps me even when running at normal easy paces. It will help minimize your ground contact time. Every little increase in power that you put into the ground, you're getting off the ground quicker. So even if you're running up a grade at a steady pace, you're gonna just feel like, not that you're bouncing up the hill, but your legs may feel like they're springing off the ground just that little bit quicker. And honestly, it's gonna feel way better. And of course, over time, as you practice this, your effort level is gonna go down, so you'll be able to get up those hills much quicker. Improving your power is also gonna improve your speed. Hill strides, hill intervals, and something like this, hill bounding, it's only gonna increase your power. Minimize your ground contact time. The more time you're in the air, the less time you're on the ground, the faster you're going. There's no ground resistance, there's no friction, there's none of that when you're flying through the air. If you could just keep running without touching the ground, that would be super fast, but that's not exactly how it works. Give these exercises a try. I didn't make this up. This is coming straight from Kilian. He's the GOAT. So if you don't trust me, trust him. Give it a shot.